there, I'm Anita. I'm Visitor Experience and Senior Education Coordinator here at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center. I want to talk a little bit today about this statue, sometimes called African Women at the Well, reportedly one of the favorite possessions of Harriet Beecher Stowe. But really, this is more of a story about what we know, how we know, and how our understanding changes when we learn something different and we see things a little bit differently than we did before. So starting with what we do know, the answer is not a whole lot. And so this statue was done by a man named Charles Cumberworth. He was a sculptor who sadly died very young in 1852. He was doing his work in France. This is where he was located. And around the time of his death, he grabs the attention of anti-slavery activists in the United States, especially a woman named Maria Weston Chapman, who was responsible for organizing something called the National Anti-Slavery Bazaar. And what these events were something like a cross between a flea market and a shopping spree, where folks would have lots of donated goods that they would then bid on as a way to raise funds for the American Anti-Slavery Society. So to organize for these, Maria Weston Chapman would go on these extended trips of Europe and look for some cool things to buy and bring back home for the anti-slavery bazaar. And on one of these trips, she is really taken with the sculptures that Charles Cumberworth is doing. And part of the reason why she's so taken by these sculptures is that they are a very clear distinction from usual representations of Black people in the United States, which are often caricatures, deeply offensive. Whereas if we look at this statue, we can see there's a lot of movement in how the figure is shaped. And the face of the woman, right, in this sculpture is really beautiful, very realistic. Her gaze has depth. There's a lot going on beyond just the surface level. So Maria Weston Chapman comes across this sculpture and is really taken with it. She writes an essay about it and notes how in Charles Cumberworth's work, the figures of Black people don't have any exaggerated and extenuated features. So those are her terms for it. But she calls this essay the sculptor of the torrid zone. And that's really where this gets interesting. Because at first, when I saw the title of this essay, I assumed I knew what that meant, right? In the 19th century, the torrid zone meant areas located around the equator. And so my immediate assumption was if Charles Cumberworth is the sculptor of the torrid zone, that must mean he traveled. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I don't know that he traveled, right? This is an idea about him that Chapman has added in her essay that she's published. And so then we start to ask the question of what does it mean if he didn't travel, right? If the model for this was not actually an African woman, but a Black woman living in France, right? What kind of rights did she have there? And how does that change our perception of the story? So in order to get a better sense of what I didn't know, I decided it was time to do a little bit more research. And so we'll find more about that in the next video.